Dr. N. Tell me, Sumos, how much of who you really are as a soul identity is reflected in the human beings you have occupied? Subject. Quite a lot. But no two bodies are alike. Laughs. Good body and soul mergers don't always happen, you know. I remember some of my former bodies more fondly than others. Dr. N. Would you say your soul dominates or is subordinated by the human brain? Subject. That's difficult to answer, because there are subtle differences with the brain of each body which affects how we exhibit ourselves from that body. A human would be pretty vacant without us. We treat Earth bodies with respect, though. Dr. N. What do you think human beings would be like without souls? Subject. Oh, dominated by senses and emotions. Dr. N. And you believe each human brain causes you to react differently? Subject. Well, that which I am is able to utilize some bodies better than others. I don't always feel fully attached to a human being. Some physical emotions are overpowering and I am not so effective. Dr. N. Such as the high level of rage displayed by Steve's temperament, perhaps affected by the central nervous system of this body? Subject. Yes, we inherit these things. Dr. N. But you knew what Steve would be like before you chose his body? Subject, in disgust. That's right. And it's typical of how I can make a bad situation worse. I am able to interpret only when the storms of the human mind are quiet, and yet I want to be stormy people. Dr. N. What do you mean by interpret? Subject. Interpret ideas. Make sense out of Steve's reactions to turmoil. Dr. N. To be frank, Sumos, you sound like a stranger inside Steve's body. Subject. I'm sorry to give you that impression. We don't control the human mind. We try by our presence to elevate it, to see meaning in the world, and to be receptive to morality, to give understanding. Dr. N. That's all very well, but you use human bodies for your own development too, don't you? Subject. Sure, it's a blending. We give and take with our energy. Dr. N. Oh, you tailor your energy to fit a host body? Subject. It would be better to say I use different facets of expression depending on the emotional drives of each body. Dr. N. Let's get specific, Sumos. What is going on between you and Steve's brain at this time on Earth? Subject. I have felt submerged. Sometimes my energy is tired and unresponsive to so much negativity. Dr. N. Looking back to your choices of Harum, Steve, and those other human bodies in between, do they all have traits in common which attracted you? Subject. Long pause. I am a contact entity. I seek humans who involve themselves aggressively with others. Dr. N. When I hear the word aggression, this means hostility to me, as opposed to being assertive. Is this what you intended to say? Subject. Pause. Well, I'm attracted to those who influence other people vigorously, at full tilt. Dr. N. Are you a soul who enjoys controlling other people? Subject. I wouldn't say control exactly. I avoid choosing to be people who have no intense involvement with those around them. Dr. N. Sumos, aren't you being controlling when you try to direct other souls in their lives? Subject. No response. Dr. N. What would Jor say about your human relationships? Subject. That I like power as a means of influencing the acts of humans who are decision makers, that I crave social and political groups where I lead. Dr. N. So you would not enjoy being in a human body which was quiet and unassuming? Subject. Definitely not. Dr. N. I push harder. Sumus, isn't it true you took pleasure in the way you were a part of Harum's misuse of power in Arabia, and that you gained satisfaction as Steve from mistreating your employees in Texas? Subject. Loudly. No, that isn't true. Things get out of hand easily when you try to lead humans. It's the conditions on Earth which screw everything up. It isn't all my fault. Dr. N. Is it possible that both Harum and Steve became more extreme in their conduct because your soul was with them? Subject. Heavily. I haven't done well. I know that. Dr. N. Look, Sumus. I hope you know I don't think you are a bad soul, but maybe you are easily seduced by the trappings of human authority, and you have now become someone who feels in conflict with society. Subject. Disturbed. You are beginning to sound like Jor. Dr. N. I don't presume to be doing that, Sumus. Perhaps Jor is helping us both to understand what is going on inside you. Subject. Probably. Steve and I have reached a productive stage of contact with his soul. I address this subject as if he were two people, while tightening the bowstring between his conscious and unconscious self. After applying additional conditioning to pull these two forces closer together, I close our session with a final series of questions. It is important his mind not be allowed to drift or his memories to become dissociated. To foster responsiveness, my questions are confrontive and spoken rapidly to increase the tempo of my subject's answers. Dr. N. Sumus, begin by telling me why you originally accepted Steve's body. Subject. To rise above my attraction for leading others, always wanting to be in charge. Dr. N. Is your soul identity in conflict with the direction Steve's life has taken? Subject. I don't like that part of him which is fighting to be on top and at the same time having thoughts of escape by self-destruction. Dr. N. If this is a contradiction for you, why does it exist? Subject. Childhood. Sadness. Stops. Dr. N. Who am I listening to now? Sumus, why aren't you more active in helping yourself, as Steve, overcome the shame of abandonment by Ione, and your anger from an unloving childhood with Talu and Kalish? Subject. I am grown now, and managing others won't let people hurt me anymore. Dr. N. Sumus, if you and Steve are now speaking to me as one intelligence, I want to know why your lifestyle is so self-destructive. Subject. Long pause. Because my weakness is using power for self-preservation on Earth. Dr. N. Do you feel if you were less controlling of people as an adult, life would revert to the way you were treated as a child? Subject. Angrily. Yes! Dr. N. And when you don't get self-gratification from the body of your choice, what do you do as a soul? Subject. I tune out. Dr. N. I see. And how is this accomplished, Sumus? Subject. By not being too active. Dr. N. Because you are intimidated by a body in an emotional tailspin? Subject. Well, I go into a shell. Dr. N. So you use avoidance in not actively dealing with the major lesson you came to Earth to learn. Subject. Uh-huh. Dr. N. Steve, your adoptive parents were rough on you, weren't they? Subject. Yes. Dr. N. Do you now see why? Subject. Pause. To know what being constantly judged is like. Dr. N. What else? Subject. To overcome and be whole. Bitterly. I don't know. Dr. N. I think you do know, Steve. Tell me about the damaged self you present to people around you. Subject. After some procrastination. pretending to be happy, covering up my feelings by drinking and mistreating people. Dr. N, do you want to stop this cover-up and go to work? Subject, yes, I do. Dr. N, define who you really want to be. Subject, tearfully, we don't want to be hostile to people, but don't want to risk being a non-person without respect or recognition either. Dr. N, so you are on a fence. Subject, quietly, yes, life is so painful. Dr. N, do you think this is an accident? Subject, no, I see it isn't. Dr. N, Steve and Sumus, repeat after me. I'm going to give back the pain of Ioni, Talu, and Kalish, which they gave to me for my own good, and get on with my life by becoming the identity I really want to be. Subject repeats these words 3 times for me. Dr. N, Steve, what are you going to do about revealing yourself in the future and taking responsibility for improvement? Subject, after a couple of false starts, learn to be more honest. Dr. N, and to trust that you are not a victim of society? Subject, yes. This case ended with my reinforcing Steve's understanding of who he really is and his mission in life. I wanted to help liberate him as a person of value, with a contribution to make in society. We talked about his love and fear choices, as well as the necessity to get in touch with himself frequently. I felt we had laid the groundwork for his dealing with resentment and a lack of intimacy. I reminded Steve of the need for follow-up counseling. About a year later, he wrote to tell me his recovery was going well and that he had found the lost child within himself. Steve realized his past mistakes were not failures, but the means to improvement. Case 27 demonstrates how the hard tasks we set for ourselves often begin in childhood. This is why considerable weight is given to family selection by the soul. The idea that each of us voluntarily agreed to be the children of a given set of parents before we came into this life is a difficult concept for some people to accept. Although the average person has experienced love from his or her parents, many of us have unresolved, hurtful memories of those near to us who should have offered protection and did not. We grow up thinking of ourselves as victims of biological parents and family members whom we inherited without any choice in the matter. This assumption is wrong. When clients tell me how much they suffered from the actions of family members, my first question to their conscious mind is, if you had not been exposed to this person as a child, what would you now lack in understanding? It may take a while, but the answer is in our minds. There are spiritual reasons for our being raised as children around certain kinds of people, just as other people are designated to be near us as adults. To know ourselves spiritually means understanding why we joined in life with the souls of parents, siblings, spouses, and close friends. There is usually some karmic purpose for receiving pain or pleasure from someone close to us. Remember, along with learning our own lessons, we come to Earth to play a part in the drama of others' lessons as well. There are people who, because they live in a terrible environment, suspect the spirit world of not being a center of divine compassion. However, it is the ultimate in compassion when beings who are spiritually linked to each other come forward by prior agreement into human lives involving love-hate relationships. Overcoming adversity in these relationships may mean we won't have to repeat certain abrasive alliances in future lives. Surviving such trials on Earth places us into a heightened state of perception with each new life and enhances our identity as souls. People in trance may have trouble making a clear distinction between their soul identity and human ego. If the human personality has little structure beyond the 5 senses and basic drives for survival without ensoulment, then the soul is our total personality. This means, for example, that one could not have a human ego which is jealous and also possess a soul which is not jealous. Yet my cases indicate there are subtle variations between their soul identity and all that is manifested by the human personalities of many host bodies. Case 27 showed similarities and differences in the personalities of Harum and Steve. Our constant soul self seems to be a governing agent of human temperament, but we may express ourselves differently with each body. The souls of my subjects apparently select bodies which try to match their character flaws with human temperament for specific growth patterns. In one life, an overly cautious, low-energy soul might be disposed to blending with a quiet, rather subdued human host. This same soul, encouraged to take greater risks in another life, could choose to work more in opposition to its natural character by melding with a temperamentally high-strung, aggressive body type on Earth. Souls both give and receive mental gifts in life through a symbiosis of human brain cells and intelligent energy. Deep feelings generated by an eternal consciousness are conjoined with human emotion in the expression of one personality, which is as it should be. We don't need to change who we are in relation to life's experiences, only our negative reactions to these events. Asian Buddhists say enlightenment is seeing the absolute soul ego reflected in the relative human ego and acting through it during life. In the chapters on beginning, intermediate, and advanced soul levels, I gave case samples of soul maturity. I think souls do demonstrate their own patterns of ego in the bodies they inhabit, and they exert a powerful influence over body performance. However, making hasty judgments on a soul's maturity based solely on behavioral traits has its pitfalls. The design plan of souls could include holding parts of their energy in reserve in some lives. Sometimes a negative trait is selected by an otherwise developed soul for special attention in a certain body. We have seen how a soul selects the person with whom it wishes to associate in a given life. This does not mean that it has absolute control over that body. In extreme cases, a fractured personality struggling with internalized conflicts may result in a dissociative reaction to reality. I feel that this is a sign the soul is not always able to regulate and unify the human mind. I have mentioned how souls may become so buried by human emotion in bodies which are unstable that by the time of death they are contaminated spirits. If we become obsessed by our physical bodies or carried along on an emotional roller coaster in life, the soul can be subverted by its outer self. Many great thinkers in history believed the soul can never be fully homogeneous with the human body and that humans have two intellects. I consider human ideas and imagination as emanating from the soul, which provides a catalyst for the human brain. How much reasoning power we would have without souls is impossible to know, but I feel that the attachment of souls to humans supplies us with insight and abstract thought. I view the soul as offering humans a qualitative reality, subject to conditions of heredity and environment. If it is true that every human brain has a host of biological characteristics, including raw intelligence and the facility for invention, which are separate from the soul, then choosing our body raises an important question. Do souls choose bodies whose intellectual capabilities match their own development? For instance, are advanced souls drawn to human brains with high intelligence? In looking at the scholastic and academic achievements of my clients, I find there is no more correlation here than with an immature soul being inclined to bodies with lower intellectual aptitudes. The philosopher Kant wrote that the human brain is only a function of consciousness, not the source of real knowledge. Regardless of body choice, I find souls do demonstrate their individualism through the human mind. A person may be highly intelligent and yet have a closed attitude about adjusting to new situations, with little curiosity about the world. This indicates a beginner soul to me. If I see someone with an evenness of mood, whose interests and abilities are solidly in focus and directed toward helping human progress, I suspect an advanced soul at work. These are souls who seek personal truths beyond the demands of ego. It does seem a heavy burden that in every new life, a soul must search all over again to find its true self in a different body. However, some light is allowed through the blackout of amnesia by spiritual masters who are not indifferent to our plight. When it comes to finding soulmates on Earth and remembering aspects of the lives we saw in the place of life selection, there is an ingenious form of coaching which is given to souls just before the next life. We will see how this is done in the following chapter.